Thank you, and we are already about 35 minutes behind schedule, but that's obviously expected when you have legal leaders together. We have never been taught to speak little, so we assure you that we will follow in the true traditions and extend our timelines as well. So with that, we can begin. So just to set the context, compliance management is now close to 15 years in the making in terms of a technology-based solution. Obviously, organizations have been compliant for many decades before that. But in terms of having a legal tech solution to drive compliance management, it's roughly a decade and a half in the making. And obviously, there's been a lot of evolution. There are a lot of conversations that have happened since then. Many products have come into the market. We are one of them, obviously, and that's why we are probably doing this session. And but there are many others. And oftentimes, when people deploy a compliance management solution, they don't go in with a clear understanding of what works, what they should be looking out for, what are the key challenges one should consider, or key things that one should consider before buying a compliance solution, what they should consider at the point of deployment, and of course, what are the ongoing challenges that they face, and therefore what kind of a compliance partner they should choose to be able to get the right value. Because every business is different, and unlike with many other types of legal support and services, the world of compliance is a place where if the partner does not understand your business, it is quite unlikely that they will be able to give you the truest value for what you're looking for, because a compliance solution is really not just a workflow tool. The core of the compliance solution, and like I keep telling people, the compliance information, the knowledge, the various types of compliances, the way it needs to be mapped within the organization is the chocolate. The solution is really just the wrapper. And you can have the coolest wrapper in the world, but if the chocolate is not good, beyond the point, no one's going to buy your chocolate just because of the wrapper. And therefore, it is important to have the right set of parameters to determine who you get to partner with, because compliance partnerships usually last many, many years. I have 3 compliance partners, we are a compliance partner for 3 different organizations who are on the panel today, and all of them have been with Lexplosion for 6+ years, in some cases 7+ years. And the reason is not because we are the best, it's because once we are in, it's very difficult to get us out. So therefore, it is important to be sure that you have chosen the right partner, because it's a bit like marriage. You can be stuck forever, and therefore it's important to know the right parameters. With that, I will start with Sanjeev. I think the introductions are done, so I'll not go back to the introductions. Sanjeev, again, is a part of the Novartis legal leadership team. He's the head of legal. Novartis has been using ComRisk for close to 7 years, or a little more actually. So I would like to know from Sanjeev, what are the decision-making points? What are the parameters to decide on the right compliance partner?
Thanks, Indranil, for the introduction. And more than Novartis, I speak more of my personal experiences here. You rightly mentioned, and you gave a good analogy of the chocolate and the wrapper. And I think the most important point, when you especially have thousands of law in the country, to choosing the ones which are really important to you. There could be a set of laws which are, yes, applicable, but may not be so relevant when you are actually mapping them. So one of the biggest issue is the complete coverage and the exhaustive list of the laws that are applicable. Now, choosing law, that is easier probably in today's time, when you can get a complete list, you draw the complete, these are the sections which are applicable, that is easier. But then understanding of those laws, and I think that's where the expertise, the experience, and the knowledge of the compliance partner comes in. And if you remember, we had a long discussion when we talked in terms of that these are the provisions, these are how it is to be interpreted, and accordingly the language for compliance that gets into the tool assumes a great significance. So what is actually, and because it should not only be read by a lawyer, it should also be understood by the other business partners we have in the organization. So it has to be simple, yet it has to meet the requirement of compliance, which is complying with the law. So that's the first task. The second task, of course, in choosing is the expertise and how quick they are in updating the system. At times, how quickly they update us that this is the change which is coming in. And in the fluid world today, where laws are changing, the rules are changing so fast, capturing them and getting into the system and again making people understand, these are two very vital parameters of getting the right partner, if I may say so.
Right. And Sanjeev, you brought in a very interesting point about, compliance tools being used beyond lawyers. And that was one of our first, life lessons when from being compliance consultants, which is how Lexplosion started its journey. We were a bunch of lawyers. We had no background to technology. We had no plans of introducing a technology solution. And therefore, when we wrote our compliance libraries and created it, we created it for lawyers and compliance professionals, or the way we presented it, everything was in a particular style. And then for the first time, when we decided to bring it out and make it into a software-based solution, we realized that the entire presentation had to change. From the fact that, to your point, people in different works of life were now going to use the content. So to be able to present it in a manner where they understand. And then to also understand that compliance no longer was just section references. Compliance was an action, which therefore required multiple sections, rules, laws to be read together, because payment of wage is one action and could cover various laws, various rules. And to be able to figure that out in itself took us a long time. And I think that's a very important point and a very important, crucial decision-making point when you're choosing a compliance partner. I would definitely want to go to both Rashmi and Aparna with the same question, because they were very, very, Aparna, most of you have heard of Kalidasa, the famous poet who sat on top of a tree and cut the branch and fell down and hurt himself. I feel a bit like Kalidasa by introducing Aparna to the panel, because she's going to butcher Comrisk, and she's going to butcher Lexplosion for whenever she gets a chance. And I look forward to that. She has been an incredible, force of nature for Lexplosion and Comrisk, with all her thoughts between her and her team. She runs an extremely complex business called DP World, which has everything from, they have railways, they have coaches and tracks and ports and God knows what else. It's actually scary what all they are up to. And when we first took it on, we didn't even know what we were getting into, and it's taken us years to just figure it out. But Aparna, what made you choose us over all the others? How bad were the rest that you had to go with us?
So thank you, Indranil. He's being very kind. But when we started, I think what was very important, that we needed to understand that this was to be enterprise-wide, because it's not something which a compliance team or legal is going to take care of. So I think there was a lot of conversations internally that this has to be having a buy-in of the senior management, because compliance is something which is tedious at times, time consuming, and therefore it had to be a high level approach where the top management agreed that this needs to be deployed. So what we also therefore did is involve them in the process of choosing the compliance partner, because we knew that we were taking up an exercise which would run over various team members, communication becoming extremely critical, and there was always a thought that we would come up with some compliances which had been missed out, and also that some compliances were not being met the way they were supposed to be met. So, keeping all that in mind, it was an agreed discussion point. We identified, I think, a whole lot of business requirement document as to what are the pain points and why we need them. So I think once the why is very strongly agreed between the functional heads and the senior team, then it becomes much simpler as and when you face issues to resolve it, because it's understood that the intent of this whole exercise is to ensure that you are mitigating risk, ensuring compliances are met, and you're creating a huge repository across our various locations and businesses. So as we speak, we have, I think, more than 8,000 compliances mapped on com-risk for our businesses, over some 15 companies, and I think about more than 150 people. So one of the choice was how deeply Lexplosion was agreeable to take it up as not a product which they sell to us, but to customize it and to become a part of our business. To take the effort to understand our business, they visited our business locations and had those conversations. So it also requires a lot of time and their expertise to come up with what works best for us, especially when you are mapping as to what are the data fields on which you want to have reports, etc. come up. Thank you.
No, thank you, Aparna, and I think you made some extremely important points. For people who are about to take a decision on choosing a compliance solution, please don't get intimidated by that 8,000 number. It's because there's an incredibly complicated business. It's not like every business has 8,000 compliances. And but the challenge that that I think Aparna's business faced, and we learned a lot as we started deploying with them, is the diversity of the business, the number of locations that they have, the number of different types of people who are involved in doing compliances, made it a very, very interesting challenge. And if I can say so, today their usage is almost 100%, month on month. And that is true for all my, the three organizations who are representing. And that's not happened overnight. That's taken a lot of time. And that's probably happened because of a lot of driving that has happened internally, change management that has happened internally, messages that have gone out. Of course, we have tried to do whatever we can. But the fact is that on the first day, when people start deploying the tool, and I will bring in that, Rashmi, and I know that you were deeply involved in the selection process. Once you selected it, the tool, what went into the internal discussions? What kind of change management did you have to really do?
So when we were choosing the tool, and we looked at three tools, okay. So of course the parameters were that it should have the compliance library should be comprehensive. So it should cover all the applicable laws. The updates should be coming in on time, and the tool should be capturing those updates. So all those basics and fundamentals were covered, all the management looked at it. But as a person who is going to implement this, for me, what was also very important was that the tool has to be user-friendly. It's a very underrated feature, I should say, but for me it was extremely important, because I knew that the people who are going to use this tool are going to be, from the admin, from finance, from HR, right? And enforcing that tool on them itself is going to be a big challenge. So at least let the tool be user-friendly enough, to tell them that, look, that this is so easy. I know it's a new process for you. It's going to be, it's always going to be low on their priority. Doing the compliance is something that they will do, because there can be penalties. But reporting that compliance in a tool, it will always be low on their priority, right? So at least give them an easy to use tool, so that I think that's the first
and that user friendliness is again something that we had to adopt to, because as is quite evident by looking at me, I'm very old and therefore not so good with technology. So initially our tool was completely desktop driven. Everything was on, you had to log in using your desktop or laptop and then go into a particular part of the application to see different things. And for the longest time, our technology team said that we need a mobile application. And I kept saying that these are very, very big companies. They have so many IT restrictions. Mobile application will not work. But eventually, when we launched the mobile application, in many organizations where people work in remote location, in factories and mines, which are not really in the heart of a city, and who really struggle to upload proofs of compliance by scanning it using a scanner and uploading it, found it much easier, because now they could take a picture on their mobile phone and upload it into the tool. So from usage in some of the remote places being 30%, 40%, it immediately jumped to 70, 75% because people suddenly had a much easier journey. And like we keep telling most organizations that Comdisk is not Facebook. People are not just dying to have thousands of friends or have thousands of connects. They are not dying to have thousands of compliances in their plate. So to make it easy is very important. So I think, Rashmi, you make a very, very important point out there. So with that, if I can move to Aparna, maybe you, on the post decision making, once you've signed up with a compliance vendor. We've had cases where we've had clients who've said, in 2 weeks, we want all compliances to be mapped and we want to see reports. Our board meeting is coming up on the next month end. All the reports should be absolutely available through the tool. If that doesn't happen, you have failed us, right? But the deployment process in most cases takes months, in some cases takes years. Now, if you can just tell us how you manage that. I'm sure you faced your internal challenges as well. How did you manage that? How did you get us the time that was required to make it happen?
Okay, so I think what we did is we broke it down, the deployment, into phase-wise. We started with the companies which we thought were all there and completely stabilized, because then it becomes easier to, move from a manual to a tech process. We identified and created cross-functional groups so that, and we had the lead for each of them. And then I think we had a weekly call with Lexplosion at the highest level to see that it happens. They also provided us dedicated resources, both from our end and their end. And we broke it into multiple small nuggets because, then you keep believing that the goals are being achieved and you're moving forward. A lot of adaptation happened during the course because, what you think you want to do and what actually starts happening is a little different. So there was, I think, a lot of communication, a lot of small successes that we shared between teams, things which we highlighted to their seniors. So, it was always kept communicated to across. So I think it's a basic change management which is happening, and therefore you need to be realistic that if you need it to work well, you need to give it the time that it needs and be prepared for some things not going as planned, and then you recoup, come back together, figure it out, and go back and deploy it. So I think that's the key.
Right, and those are very, very important points, to have internal teams, break it up into phases, make sure that you are actually looking at each phase as a small achievable goal rather than trying to boil the ocean is a very important point. Rashmi, again, I know that you were involved with the deployment of Comdisk from day one. Your thoughts on this would be of great value for sure.
Yes, so change management is a difficult process, especially, when you add to someone's work, right? So the way we did it was we ensured that all the senior people were involved. So the admin head, the senior most admin person, the senior most HR, the CHRO, the CFO. So everybody is involved, and the seriousness or the gravity of the compliance tool kind of trickles down from there. Also, I think it's important to have a very good team who is deploying the compliance tool, because they have to be approachable and they have to be very smart and should have the ability to resolve conflicts. But because a team is a robot, you are not a robot. You have to have that knack of talking to people, and so it's also about people management. And the compliance team themselves should know the tool very well to be able to solve conflicts. And of course, the partner, I can vouch for this. We actually were very happy with the support that we got in terms of answering all the queries that were coming, being very patient with all those queries when the implementation, was happening.
And I think we've also learned with years. Initially, we used to be a lot more, rigid in our thought process that these are not things Lexplosion should have to do. allocating tasks to different people, reallocating, creating subtasks. We always felt that these are things that should be done by the business because that you are in the best position to know. But we realized with time that, if you don't provide that support, if you don't get into the picture and start having the right conversations, obviously with the senior most level, which Rashmi, you very correctly pointed out, that wherever we have seen our solution not succeed, or a lot of times there is another solution and we are being told that it's not working, you have to come in. That's what we try and go and understand. Why is it not working? Because, we have, I don't know whether Lee is in the room now, we have Legasis, one of our key competitors. Somebody from his team is there. And they're brilliant as well. Don't buy their solution ever. Always go with Comrisk, but they're actually very good. And I know Suhas for many, many years, and we are as good, close to being friends as possible amongst competitors. But the reason why it fails is not because of Legasis or Lexplosion or Legatrix or Comrisk. In most cases, it fails because the right level of people are not involved. The organization had maybe had pressures from the board or somewhere to deploy a solution, and they went ahead and did it. Maybe they, pushed very hard to do it as quickly as possible, but they did not involve the right set of people. So what happens then is, inevitably, once the tasks start triggering, people start getting those hundreds of compliances, that 8,000 compliances that Aparna talked about, they start getting triggered as actions for different people, they start pushing back. And then they go, and if the change management hasn't happened properly, they go and speak to their bosses and say, boss, tell me, main kya karu? Do you want me to do compliance or do you want me to do work? And this is exactly how it's presented in most cases. Main kaam karu ya compliance karu? And obviously, any right-thinking manager will say, "Kaam karo." I mean, I'll handle the compliance bit. And then they go up to the, different people in the likes of Rashmi and Aparna and say, "Boss, what is this? Can we not park it for a quarter or something like that?" And that's how the whole thing starts becoming a problem. And then, internal change management becomes an issue. You handle an extremely complex organization, Sanjeev. What are your experiences on that, and how have you been managing?
It's not only about a particular organization. I think Aparna touched upon it, Rashmi mentioned about it. When you are adding, and you mentioned it, it's not Facebook, right? Compliance. But the fact of the life is, compliance is part of the life of any organization, right? Now, trusting them from top builds resistance. And just before this session, we were talking about if there is resistance, you are not going to imbibe that value. Right. So I think the biggest thing is getting the buy-in. And you get the buy-in when you bring out the value, you tell them how this is going to aid them. It could be a pain point, maybe for the first 2 times or first 2 quarters. But when you explain it to them that how this is going to make their life easier in times to come, and then probably you will like to get the value in. Also, you have to stand by them and tell that, look, you're not alone. It's not that I am pushing my job to you. It is our job because I do not know the facts, and hence I need your support. Or maybe you are aware of the day-to-day things which you have to see that what is there or not, you have to key in those things. But should you require anything, not only me, but also the partner, they are there to support you. Should you require any clarification, if you are not clear about things, why would people resist something? Because if you are going through something and it's too complex, I really do not know law, what is the language, and why should I break my head on it? Right. So if I start understanding this, if I say, okay, this is well, and this is going to make my life easier in times to come, and it's only one time or twice, then I have to really put in my hard labor, and then life is going to be easier. Probably that gets the buy-in. And finally, if an organization has a compliance culture, when they really understand that we would have to be a compliant organization because it makes life much, much easier in a complex country. We live in with so many, not complex country, I'm so sorry, in a country with so many complex set of laws and how they are interpreted and how they are implemented by various regulators. So once they understand and they see the value, probably then the buy-in comes in. And I think Rashmi has also touched about it, the ease of using the system makes it much easier.
I'm sorry to intervene, but we would really appreciate if we can use the last few minutes for the Q&A, apart from all of you, giving your overview and summing it up.
For all those who have sessions after this, there's this clock which is ticking constantly. It almost feels like your life is going to
We
come
would
to an
love
end
to
in
hear
6
from
minutes.
you the entire
It
day,
is-
trust me, but
No, no,
unfortunately we have
it's
time
okay.
constraints.
I
so-
have one more question, which I will briefly ask, and then I'll open it up for the panel. It is, the scary 6 minutes is showing up. So I will end with just one final question. Decision was made, tool was chosen, deployment has happened. All of you are more than 5 years plus into using a software solution. What have been the life lessons that you've learned over the last 6, 7 years of having deployed? And what needs to happen on an ongoing basis for the compliance management solution and the compliance management infrastructure to really work within each system? And we can start with Aparna, go to Rashmi, and end with Sanjeev.
So I'll just keep it short and quick. I think robust regulatory updates at the pandemic times, this was extremely critical because a lot of regulatory updates came up and compliances could be met. Times got extended. It flashed onto the system and people could see it, etc. So I think that's one important thing that happened. Second is that over a period of time, because of the compliance culture in the organization, people are now appreciating the system. They don't see this as something. So when you said kaam karo ke compliance karo, compliance is part of work. So it's not outside that. So I think that's what's been imbibed by the system and the teams everywhere. So I think these are the two key takeaways. And we continuously create a buzz around it. We continuously share reports. We applaud the ones who did well. So obviously the ones who didn't get to know that they are falling back somewhere.
The key takeaway for me is, of course, you have to ensure that the tool gets used continuously, and if the senior most person is made answerable. It's like at one point, on one hand, the tool is easy to use. On the other hand, if you don't use it, your senior most team member, it's answerable, maybe, to the C-suite or to the audit committee. So it's like, I rather, use this tool and report my compliance than create the drama later, right? So that's one. Two, having a very approachable, congenial compliance team. I think that has worked very well for me. My team is sitting here, so kudos to them. They have been really driving this well. And I think one word of caution is that when you have a compliance tool, it's a reckoner internal auditors, right? So they are going to pick up the tool, pick up things which have been reported to be done and check. So the credibility of the reporting has to be maintained, and you have to spread that awareness amongst your teams that your reporting should be accurate and true. Or if it's not there, report that it's not done. We're fine, we'll explain, right? But don't report something which is inaccurate and not true.
Sanjeev.
You touch upon a very vital and important critical aspect, Rashmi, that the reporting has to be accurate. And we had in my experience, we had a different experience. Means something was already compliant, but it was reported as non-compliant because the person did not could not interpret it correctly. And I think that's the learning here is communication. Try and understand, not only from auditor's perspective, but imagine if you are reporting something which actually you are compliant, but you are just sticking it without understanding it's non-compliant. It's an open admission to any regulator who may walk in.
Correct.
Right? Your report itself says it's non-compliant. So I think communication with the team who's actually, or with the business partner who's actually submitting a report, asking him whether he requires any clarification or anything where we can help him, or anything where the compliance partner can help him in making a tool better. That is very, very critical in order to keep the tool working and ticking always.
Perfect. We have 2 minutes left.
We still
enough
do.
time to make a cup of Maggie, so enough time to ask a couple of questions as well. So,
Yes. We would really appreciate a couple of questions coming in from the audience. Yeah. There are a few hands that we can
Is
see
Legacy
raised in
allowed to
India.
ask questions or not?
That means the panel is indeed very successful. So thank you for keeping the tempo.
we should ask Shantanu first and then, yeah.
First from being a compliance consultant to being a technology first company, and then from desktop to app and so on. Now, legal tech, of course, tech in general has changed again now, right, with the advent of artificial intelligence. So obviously, I think this is a question to everybody on the panel. Sanjeev, Rashmi, Aparna, your stakeholders, at some point the CFO is going to come along and say, how can we use AI to make things better? Just as they came and said, how can we use compliance software to make things better for the organization? Indranil, your competitors will at some point, if they aren't already, integrated into their products. So what opportunities, obviously there are issues with, even GPT-4 is just launched, it's already being integrated into consumer-facing products. But I think, Indranil, for you, what challenges do you see in integrating it into your product offerings? And Aparna, Rashmi, Sanjeev, how are you managing questions from your stakeholders about what value AI can bring to your legal teams? Thank you.
I have a lot to say, but I'll first open it up for the panelists. If you've already started thinking about AI, please.
So thankfully, that question hasn't been raised yet. But I have a very easy kind of backfire to make for them. We are an IT company. So I am like, you tell us, you look at the tool and, you tell us. So, because I am otherwise very old school, especially when it comes to a compliance tool, I'll be very cautious in deploying AI. And I am sure I'll look at it very closely if that is being done. So, but yeah, I mean, being a technology company, I have that advantage that I'll tell them, you tell me.
I'm not an IT expert. I don't know what is artificial intelligence. Maybe it is data analytics. Maybe it is collection of data and then predicting something, right? That's my simple understanding of artificial intelligence. What is required is data. So whichever the tool it may be, I say, I'll tell you about law, you tell me about data. Data is here. Let's put our heads together in what best manner we can do it in the interest of the organization. I'm open to it.
So if I can, I think, AI, of course, is very broad. I think if we can broadly divide it into algorithmic logic, which is something that many of us have already started adopting. While we don't necessarily always open it up in the front end for our clients, the fact that, there are 8,000 compliances that need to be identified for a client, 5,000 for somebody else. If we have to do it entirely manually, it's going to take us, 5 years for each deployment, and that's not practical. So we definitely use a fair amount of algorithmic logic which we have built over the years, and which we then, constantly work on and improve, which definitely also has a certain amount of data going into it to improve it. So we do that. But the other part, the one that you talked about GPT-4, or, I've been on the road, so not really experienced GPT-4 yet. GPT 3.5 is something that I've experienced. For something like that to be integrated with, let's say, a solution like ours, we'll need a lot more assurance. What I tell, all our young law graduates who join us is that, in law school, if you got 80% in a subject, they would, consider you as a topper, right? And they would give you a lot of kudos for that. But when you are dealing with a client, and if you're 80% correct, you are putting them under serious jeopardy, right? If you're 20% wrong, they could, all three of them could be potentially in jail, and that's not a situation that any of them want to be in. Therefore, till GPT or any of the other AI-driven solutions can give us that reasonable assurance that the responses are of a level where we do not need another level of manual intervention to be sure that they're correct, we will find it a little difficult to really integrate, because I was having an offline chat with you. I've personally realized that if you know a particular law and then you use GPT 3.5, the most scary part is not what the answers they give. The scary part is how confidently they can lie and make you believe that the answer is correct when it actually is not. And till I'm absolutely sure that that has been taken out of the system, I will at least personally find it difficult to allow any of the current AI-based solutions to get integrated with our product. So that's really the answer. But there was a question from Legacies which we must take.
Yes, please. I think we can still spare a minute. Yeah, can we please give him a mic over there?
Lee, I was talking about you when you were not in the room.
Hello all, I'm Anuj Kaul. I'm the AVP Compliance Practice working with Legacies. It's such a nice pleasure to hear the initial customer experience. Kudos to Comrisk, and my question is more rather to have views from all the panelists when it comes to compliance and sustainability, and how it can be more sustainable, and how can we kind of make an attempt to merely perhaps change the mindset of tick the box when it comes to compliance?
I would like to take the question and also add one more perspective. As I mentioned, is making the people, when we talk in terms of sustainability, right? It's because if you see compliance, I'm not talking about a tool, I'm talking about compliance. It could be Legacies, it could be Comrisk, it could be anything. I'm talking about the responsibility of an organization to meet all the statutory compliances which are there. So having a compliance culture is the first step towards sustainability, because not only it ensures the sustainability of the partner, but it ensures the sustainability of the organization. One wrong move or one non-compliance, we have seen the fate of many organizations, right? Because if they were non-compliant, and what could happen to them. So basically the buy-in and why compliance is required, seeing the value, that's more important. We talked about regular update, and also I think it requires a localization in a country like India. With due respect to all the compliance system providers here, a tool may not be able to cover up all the compliances that are required. For example, in a deep remote corner of Maharashtra, if one has a factory, there could be many rules or compliances or license conditions that could have been imposed by a panchayat. Have we covered those? That input has to come in from the company or the organization to the compliance partner so they can build in. Because finally it needs to work out and a solution for it, both. So it is important to be continuously engaged. The legal persons here, it's important to be continuously engaged, understand what are the requirements, check whether it is provided, and and convey this value to the organization. And the proof of the pudding is in eating it. As long as you are showing that these are the compliances we are meeting with it, it is actually providing value to the organization. It's a good insulation to the organization from any regulatory challenge we may face. I think we continue to sustain all that.
So I would absolutely agree to what Sanjeev just said. And I believe that whilst we may have systems, it's eventually the people who matter the most. And compliance is a mindset. So whilst the senior management and the boards would appreciate a good compliance-oriented companies, so I think it's a value which runs across an organization, and the people then tend to accept it and move towards it. So I think it's people, process, and a culture. Actually, compliance is a culture, and systems just help to make it more stronger and robust, and gives the proof that Sanjeev spoke of.
I think what I've seen working to make compliance culture sustainable or a compliance tool sustainable is ensuring that compliance is not just a problem of the compliance team. Okay? The senior most person of the respective department should be answerable. It should flow top down. So the audit committee, the compliance team, of course, but CHRO, head of admin, CFO, all those people, the moment the top person is answerable, or everything falls in line, because they know that if they don't do certain things, their boss is going to be answerable. So I think that works really well. How much ever everybody is convinced about compliance being important, necessary, reporting being necessary, they'll always put it on low priority. They'll do the compliance maybe, but they may not report it. So if you want to put it on their priority list, the top person should be answerable. I think that's what has worked.
And please have an effective governance structure on both sides. I think that really helps in resolving if things are not moving. I will not give anything more away to Legacies.